It's time for Tab Talks and the second segment of homeschooling tips for parents of public school students. I'm your host, Jennifer Rash.
And I'm your co-host, Debbie Campbell.
We are talking with 21-year veteran home educator, Deb Lowry. Deb also works with the Alabama Baptist and Tab Media. Deb, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so we are trying to help all the parents out there who are now all of a sudden co-teaching with the teacher back at the school or at his or her home, really, trying to move their studies along, trying to make it through this semester, trying to close this school year out, really, and trying to figure all of that out. So we've talked with Melissa Jordan previously, and she gave some tips, and we wanted to hear from your side as a mother and grandmother who has done this, 21 years. That's pretty good. Tell us what you would say to those parents doing this for the first time.
Pray. A lot of prayers. And that's on a serious note. You can't do this without praying and seeking Him.
So good.
So that's how, over the 21 years, we started our day, was through prayer. And so yes, just pray and seek His face through it. There's going to be days where you're not going to be happy, or your children are not going to be happy, and everything's just going to go crazy. There's going to be crazy days. That's just life.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, pray first and seek Him, and then it'll all work out. And that's my number one thing on the list, is to do that first. And
that's really good. Did you do the prayer as a corporate prayer with your
with my children? Well, actually, I started by myself first. To keep my sanity, I had to pray. Yes. And then if you don't have any gray hair, you're liable to acquire a few gray hairs like this. So.
Okay, so after you pray, what would be your first thing every morning?
Well, we usually would have a breakfast. You can't think properly unless you have nutrition. So we would usually eat breakfast, and then we would get started. And I did have a schedule. We didn't always adhere to the schedule, but 90-something% of the time we did. So it does help to have a schedule. Bible after prayer, and then your other lessons come after that. We usually spend about 45 minutes per subject.
Okay.
We always did not, sometimes we went longer than the 45 minutes, and sometimes we didn't quite complete 45 minutes. But we always incorporated an activity or a craft that kind of went with the subject. Because my kids were basically hands-on, and they had to do things hands-on.
Mm-hmm.
Also, we did take breaks. We did go outside. You have to have some outside time. Trust me. I have children that are ADD. Mm-hmm. I'm ADD, so attention span is very short. So just have fun with each other and get to know each other. It's a blessing to be able to do this. And it started when I read Deuteronomy, and where in Deuteronomy 6:1, where it said the Lord is basically, or Moses is telling them, he said, "And these words which I command you today shall be in your heart, that you shall teach them diligently to your children, and you shall talk of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up, and you shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes, and you shall write them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates."
That's really good. That's really good.
Schooling starts with parents. God gave us the responsibility to teach our children and to train them up. And so I'm blessed to have been able to do that for 21 years. And Like I said, there were days where I wanted to cry. There were trying days, but the Lord brought us through it. And it was a blessing to see my children finish, and they finished well. They're all grown now. They're out in the work world, so working, and I miss it. All I have is a dog now, and
Yeah.
I can't train him well for some reason.
I think you
Um,
should, I think you should try. I really do.
Henry needs training.
Yeah. Deb, I
Yes,
have
ma'am.
a question because a lot of these parents are going to have, more than one, maybe 2 or 3 children. And
Yes.
so do you allow one to study one subject and maybe a younger one do a different subject at the same time? Or what's an idea you have there to help as a teacher
If
home teacher with multiple
Right.
ages?
Sure, it's all every family is different. A lot of parents, I know that mine were not that close in age, so they did, like, one would do their math, and then the other I would work with because they were a lot younger. So I would work and do grammar with them. But if your children are close to age, you can do a units together. You can actually learn together, like history or whatever, and talk about stuff together as a subject. So yes, it's all different. Every family's not the same, uniformed. Like all children also learn at their own pace. They learn differently. So every family's unique in how they teach or want to teach. But yes, if you have more than one child, and this is how we did it. I had Sarah and I had Christopher. They're 8 years apart. So like I said, Sarah would go to her study corner and she would do her history or her math while I was teaching Christopher and his grammar or, whatever subject that we had to do. And then we would switch off. Then Christopher would have his independent work that he would have to do. And then I would sit with Sarah and help her. And you can have, you can use the kitchen table. You can use, you can make your own little schoolroom. We had a bedroom that had 2 desks in it. So we actually had our own little homemade schoolroom. So that kind of kept them in there. But you can like I said, that's all different. If you want everybody to work at the kitchen table, you can, or if you want them separated. Sometimes it's better if they're separated because they can learn better if they're separated from each other. So, does that answer that?
What about families who may have 2 parents at home right now? Is there a benefit or a pro and a con, I guess, if they tackle this together, or is it better to have one parent in that role?
That is a good question, Jennifer. I think it's beneficial if you have two parents, because one parent can take one child, and it's like the one-on-one approach. So you have one parent teaching math to one and the other parent teaching history to the other. So that is good if you can do that. And there are a lot of homeschooling families that have both parents at home that are able to do that. My 21 years of homeschooling, my husband had to work a job, so I was the primary teacher. But in the evening hours, sometimes, even with that, when the husband's at home or the wife's at home or whatever, and there's 2, then, you can do it in the evening hours, because that's another thing. It's not a specific, excuse me, it's not a specific time. You can teach them in the evening as well as you can teach them in the morning.
Would that be something that the families could think about? Is if they are they do better sleeping in and then staying up later, just being okay with finding the prime time for their family?
Prime time, sure. Like I said, all families are going to be different, so it's not all uniformed. So yes, if it works better for the father to be at home in the evening and help to teach, that would be great. Then they could sleep in later in the morning, or they could get up and do outside activities, and during the day. So.
What do you recommend, Deb, to help parents stay organized? Teachers have, their teacher, logs and things that they work with and lesson plans. So any tips or recommendations for parents who now suddenly have to keep up with all of this?
Well, I just hope that you have some good organizational skills. I mean, it's just a matter of keeping it in the, proper folders or whatever.
Okay. So you recommend like setting up folders
for each subject, for each child. So they'll have different folders, and keep their work in that. But that's what I recommend.
And in this case, it'll be a little different than homeschooling because there will be structured information coming from the teacher of what needs to be accomplished. So I'm guessing there'll have to be a little bit of a give and take in that as well to figure out the plans and maybe some flexibility on the school's part to say, here's the goal. You may not do it exactly like your teacher would have done it in class, but if you can get to the goal, that's the point here. So maybe just a little bit of flexibility. But in that, how would you suggest that parents just tackle this right away? Because they don't have a lot of time to really prepare or think or train. We're hoping these quick videos will help. But is there one or two things for sure they need to definitely do? We know pray and we know be organized. In that mode of organization, is there one or two things that you couldn't live without? Sharpie markers or?
Yes, and a whiteboard is helpful.
Okay, good.
Okay, so those are going to go to the Amazon shelves really quick.
Yes, the whiteboards.
Also, something I just thought of. Yes, I just thought about something too. If they're struggling in their math problems, because a lot of children sometimes, they're not math geniuses. Christopher was great at it. That's why I'm thankful, because I wasn't. But you can do math tutorials online. So if you don't have a teacher there that they're used to, then they can get online and do math tutorials to help them.
Okay. That's good. That's really good. And would you suggest too, just a sharing of resources with friends, family, neighbors? If one parent just happens to be really skilled in one topic and another parent, even if they have to do it kind of like we're doing right now with a Zoom call, would that be something maybe that would be a way to lighten the load a little bit if one parent teaches several kids over Zoom?
Oh yes, that would be great. Even homeschooling, we did co-op once a week. So we had other parents that taught a class. I taught science or one of the sciences. So it always helps to have a pool of other parents involved. So each has their own, that you can use to help your child if you're having struggles with trying to figure out how to do it. Then yes, that would be great. Get on Zoom and have a collective amount of parents on there to help each other. So that is a good tool to use.
And then the parents can have their own Zoom conversation later without the kids, where they could just.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right. That is good too. That's why I loved lunch at co-op, because that's when all the parents got together and they got to relax for a change,
Yeah.
And by the way, you cannot get away from your children at home by going in the bathroom, because mine always found me. They'd always pass notes underneath the door. So when parents needed a break, it was nowhere to be found.
So that part we're just going to have to accept, right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Oh, well, fun. Well, Deb, thank you so much for sharing your tips and your wisdom with us. And wow, again, 21 years, that's incredible. being able to do this. So maybe that's encouraging to the parents who are going to have to do this for 2 months. Deb made it 21 years, so maybe maybe that's an
Just a few gray hairs to prove it, right?
I think they will survive.
That's right.
They will.
Well, all right. And a shout out again to Melissa Jordan, Director of Faith Community Christian School in Trussville, for the first segment. She gave us tips. And Deb, thank you. And thank you all for watching and listening. We'll be back next week.